So the championship is now back, ladies and gentlemen. At least we had one game going on over the weekend, but back with the full schedule next weekend. And as that is now the case, I thought it would be adequate timing to go ahead and bring you my updated championship predictions for the end of the season. Where do I see your club finishing? This is where I've got them at the moment. Guys, if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we get 200 likes on today's video, that would be massively appreciated. Smash the like button if you are looking forward to championship football returning. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. And starting us out in 24th place, I am going with Huddersfield Town. I think they are the obvious relegation candidate at the moment. While Mark Fotheringham has come in and somewhat impacted upon things, I still think they look quite a way off the mark. Yes, he has somewhat gone ahead and solidified them at the back, and they do have quality in some positions bedded throughout that team, but that lack of firepower I think will be a major concern come the second half of the season. You know, can they be relied to score, you know, from set pieces and the odd break here regularly enough to go ahead and pick up enough points between now and the end of the season? As of right now, I'm not all too sure. Now, I do think these other relegation spots are pretty tough to pick. In 23rd place at the moment, I'm actually going for Wigan Athletic. I just think it's a massive gamble they've gone for the unproven Kolo Touré as that new head coach. I do think that, you know, the sacking of Liam Richardson was a little bit harsh given the overall quality of that squad. I think if we put it up on paper with the other teams who we expect Wigan to be in that relegation battle with, yes, there are players of quality within there, but I think they have quite a bit of work to do actually in the January transfer window if they are to go ahead and ease away from this relegation dogfight that they do look to be in at the moment. But listen, the appointment of Touré could go either way. As of right now, I'm not sure if it pays off. And my last relegation spot, I was between about four sides, but in the end I've actually gone for Cardiff. The common theme I've sort of gone for with this bottom three here is a lack of firepower and goals, and I think that that could, you know, come the end of this season, really prove to be costly for these three sides. Cardiff, also off the pitch, have had quite a few issues this season with the way in which they dismissed Steve Morrison. The fact that they then went for Hudson as his replacement didn't seem to be sort of any sort of long-term planning with that strategy to go ahead and get rid of Morrison and then bring another manager in with even less sort of managerial experience in that mould. And even since that sort of passing of the guard has happened, I don't think we've seen a particularly great bounce from this Cardiff side. I do think that when everything does click for them, there is a level of cohesion within this Cardiff side that perhaps isn't there with those other sides. But is Callum Robinson and a few of those other, you know, youngsters going to be enough to go ahead and avoid the drop with the lack of goals they've got in that squad? I'm just not sure at the moment. I think it could be a really tough second half of the season. 21st place and just avoiding the drop, I've then gone for Blackpool. Was quite split on whether to have Blackpool in this 21st place or 22nd spot. The only thing that I've got Blackpool being above Cardiff for is I do think they are more prolific in front of goal. They have more match winners within that side, and even with all the struggles that they've had up until the international break, with a few of those returning players coming back from injuries, I just think that they may have enough to go ahead and scrape things and get over the line, but they're definitely in a dogfight. 20th place, I've then gone for Hull City, who have been a little bit of a wild card so far this season, particularly with obviously Liam Rossini coming in now. We've seen a little bit of them under him as well. Long term, I'm really excited to see what he can do with this Hull squad, but for the remainder of this season, it's all about survival from this point onwards from Hull. It's a bit of a misshapen squad that they've got at the moment that he's obviously having to pull together. Individually so, I do see the quality in there, but can he go ahead and coach that into a cohesive unit for the remainder of the season? That remains to be seen, because they've been really up and down this season. Coming in 19th place, I think gone for Rotherham United. I think that what Rotherham were guilty of in seasons gone by was having a really poor first half of the season, and then they'd only managed to really get their act together in the second half of the season when ultimately things would be too late and they'd ultimately go down. I thought at the time that the dismissal, the Paul Warne situation, and with him leaving and going to Derby, may have had a little bit more of an impact on them, but I think they've actually rode out that wave fairly well, to be honest. I do think this second half of the season could potentially expose some other vulnerabilities within this Rotherham side, but on what I've seen from them so far, I do think this will be the year they beat the drop. I've got them in 19th. Coming in 18th place, I've then gone for Stoke City, who I'm still really quite split on, to be honest, because even since Alex Neil's come in, we've seen several different versions of this Stoke side. It does feel like a squad that isn't totally in sync with what Alex Neil wants from his team, and I just feel like from now until the end of the season it will be a little bit of a bumpy, inconsistent ride, and we probably won't see the best out of this squad until Neil has had a proper summer transfer window to sort of clear out some of the players that he's not fancying and get in players of his sort of desired template, because at the moment I don't think that for what Neil's long-term vision is, I'm not sure this Stoke squad totally matches up with that at the moment. Coming in 17th place, I think I'm for Bristol City. Start of the season I was really positive on Bristol City's chances of improving upon last time's finish, but it just seems to be more of the same from them under Nigel Pearson this season, which is a little bit of a shame really. Before the international break we saw their attacking numbers dwindling a little bit as well. You know, usually what we've been able to associate with this Bristol City side is high scoring but also concede quite a few, but leading up until the international break their form really did take somewhat of a nosedive. Just feel like for them, and you know Stoke similarly, it's just going to be a bit of an inconsistent ride. Coming in 16th place, I've then gone for Reading. Now as you will all know, at the start of the season I did actually have Reading predicted to finish in the bottom three. Really wasn't fancying their chances at the start of the season, but fair play to that squad and to Paul Ince for proving me wrong up until this point. Don't get me wrong, we did see somewhat of a regression in those final few weeks towards the international break, but the credit they've already got in the bank, the points they've already picked up so far, and some of the turnarounds they've actually had in terms of players proving me wrong so far this season, I've got them in a steady sort of 16th place. In at 15th, I've then gone for West Brom. I do fancy Carlos Corberán to go ahead and gradually turn the ship there, but I think they've left things too late to really go ahead and challenge all too much higher than this. I do still believe there is quality in that squad there, but Corberán still has a hell of a lot of work to do in terms of coaching them, getting together a fixed, you know, starting 11 week in, week out that can be relied upon to be consistent and come out with those performances. So 15th for West Brom, and then maybe they build and go again for next year. Going in 14th place, I've then gone for Birmingham, a side who I really thought this could be their time to have been relegated at the start of the season. Really wasn't fancying their chances, but John Eustace really proved me wrong so far this season. Excellent tactical nous, and I think that actually their summer recruitment has actually turned out to be quite underrated actually in terms of some of the gems they've gone ahead and picked up. Still having problems off the pitch though, and we'll see if that has any sort of bearing on their form in the second half of the season with the takeover recently falling through, but I think it'll be a steady year for Birmingham, and this would be, you know, progress for them, a much higher finish than where they finished in recent years. 13th place, I then gone for QPR, only for the fact that I've gone quite conservative on this QPR prediction. One, because I'm still probably a little bit scarred from how they ended last season. You know, they looked like they were, you know, shooting for the top six at one point, but things just collapsed in the second half of the season. So I think I've still got a little bit of that in the back of my mind. Also the fact that they don't have a manager as of recording right now, so I'm reluctant to commit to a bold prediction for them in terms of maybe a top six finish or something like that, you know, where they are at the moment. We did see their form tailing off quite dramatically leading up to the international break, with a few of those forward players just going off the boil a little bit, and until we know who that next manager is going to be, I'm reluctant to put them much higher, but QPR could finish anywhere from sort of 13th to 6th at the moment. That's the sort of strength of the squad, I think. In the 12th place, I then gone for my side, Preston North End. I think it'll be a steady season for us. What will be the defining factor in terms of whether we do have any sort of will to go on and maybe push on for that place in the top six will be the January transfer window. I think that Ryan Lowe has got a solid group of players in here who he's been able to get that consistency out of, but we are still lacking that little bit of firepower in the final third, and one or two of those options to go ahead and rotate with, you know, in at right wing back, maybe another creative option in the middle as well. So unless we go ahead and pick up on some of those issues, I think it'll be around about 12th for us. 11th place, I think, gone for Millwall. Solid unit there under Gary Rowett. Obviously, we did see them in action over the weekend. Cut cold in the end, 3-0 loss against Sunderland, and it'll be a really interesting championship weekend to return to, because I don't think we can really read anything into the recent form of these championship clubs, given how long this break has actually been. You know, Millwall themselves, I think, were unbeaten in their last three before that game against Sunderland, but such a long break in play will have an effect on the momentum. But Millwall in about 11th, just not sure if they have that final bit bit of cutting edge to go ahead and get over the line into the top 6, but anyone from these places onwards could feasibly mount a top 6 challenge, I think. Coming in 10th place, I think, on for Luton Town. I still think that Luton have everything set up which could feasibly lead to a top 6 finish come the end of the season, particularly with how open I think a few of those final spots in the top 6 will actually be come the end of the season. The only doubt I think we all have over Luton at this point in time is how dramatic will that impact be by Nathan Jones actually going ahead and leaving. You know, he's got his blueprints all over that club now, so to give the keys to another manager is obviously going to be quite an interesting one for the second half of the season. As it goes, I do quite like Rob Edwards, but remains to be seen how he'll do in there, but a solid finish of a top 10 place nonetheless. In at 9th place, I think, on for Sunderland. Now, the criticism that Tony Mowbray had a lot of the time with Blackburn was how good his sides were in the first half of the season, then in the second half of the season there'd just be an absolute collapse and they'd look nowhere near that side. Well, he's going to have to go ahead and put those sort of doubts to bed with Sunderland in the second half of the season. The reason I think they could have quite a exciting bump up in form in this second half of the season is some of their returning players. You know, players like Daniel Ballard and Ross Stewart especially, they're going to feel like new signings to this Sunderland squad, and the quality levels that they'll actually raise by themselves coming back into the team I think could absolutely be massive, and maybe even could be a dark horse shout for the top 6. In 8th place, I think, on for Swansea City. I was in a real toss up between Swansea and the two sides that I've then got above them in terms of who I was going to put in that first top 6 spot. Swansea, I certainly think, stand a chance come the end of the season. I think they're really in sync now with how Russell Martin wants them to go ahead and play. The only factors that I think could possibly deter them from that top 6 finish come the end of the season is having those individual mistakes which do still quite commonly seem to be popping up at the back, and whether or not someone like a Joel Perreault can properly recapture that form that he showcased throughout the majority of last season. If those two things do happen, no reason whatsoever why this Swansea side can't make the top 6, but maybe there'll just be one or two mini bumps for them to go ahead and get over the line, but I certainly think they'll be in the picture. In 7th place, and then just missing out on the top 6, I've gone for Coventry, who, to be honest, could be one of the stories of the season, given how tough they found things over those first couple of months in this season and how they've gone on to pick up things since. You know, they were one of the form teams in the Championship leading up until this international break, and still have a couple of games in hand on those teams above them that are already in the bank as well. Coventry have a lot to like about them at the moment. A lot of their matches quite closely contested, but excellent defensive record as of late, and they do have those match winners within that squad. The only thing that could potentially harm this Coventry side is come January, if there is some interest in some of those big hitters, as there was throughout the majority of the summer transfer window. You know, I've already seen a few rumours popping up around, you know, Gyökeres. I'm sure that O'Hare will have a few people interested now that he's back in the squad as well, and Gustavo Hamer no different. But this Coventry side, with one or two more additions in January, no reason why they couldn't fight for that top 6 spot. But making it into my first top 6 spot, I've actually gone for Middlesbrough. I thought I'd have to throw one or two bold shouts in there. They're 15th in the table at the moment, but as we know, this part of the table is so congested that one or two wins still at this point in the season and you absolutely fly up the league. I also think that under Chris Wilder, this Borough side were massively underperforming. I think that all the data goes ahead and backs that up, and the way in which they've gone ahead and had this new manager bounce since under Michael Carrick also showcases just how good of a side Middlesbrough actually can be when they are at their best. Tuber Akbom has been a man in form and that's firing. They've got the service there from both wing backs who are absolutely brilliant. Obviously they can switch between that 3 and 4 at the back system. Defensively, that was an issue under Wilder, how many cheap goals they were giving away, but Carrick has slowly gone about and reducing the average of goals and chances they seem to be conceding per game as well. And I just think that if there was ever going to be a side who were going to have a little bit of a gamble maybe in the January window, invest a little bit of money and back Michael Carrick, I really think that a side like Middlesbrough could come from nowhere in the second half of the season and really fire up the league. Obviously at the start of the season, I think the majority of people had Borough in there, so no reason why they can't be up there come the end of the season, but I might be getting a bit carried away with the Carrick hype there. Coming in 5th place, I think on for Blackburn Rovers. Now, this is the typical Blackburn thing that we've become used to them in recent years, really. You know, an absolutely lightning fast start, and then in the second half of the season, we just see things absolutely crumbling around them, and they wouldn't be able to maintain that. This season, under John Dahl Tomasson, does feel a little bit different. However, I do think that a couple of things need to go their way. First of all, need to go ahead and keep Ben Brereton Diaz throughout that January transfer window to give them a fighting chance of this top 6 finish come the end of the season. And Blackburn have been a real anomaly up until this point. We're 21 games in now and they're still yet to draw a match. And in a league as chaotic as it is at the moment and as muddled and inconsistent as it is, don't get me wrong, there are loads of holes that I could pick within this Blackburn side. You know, performances where they've looked really under par, performances where, you know, the goalkeeper Thomas Kaminski has really dug them out of one when the overall performance hasn't been great. With that all being said, Blackburn win matches, and with the amount of match winners that they do have in the final third and how inconsistent I think everyone below them is going to be from this point onwards, I think they get enough wins to go ahead and secure that top 6 finish. I think this season could be a little bit different for Blackburn, I really do. In 4th place, I think on for Norwich, they were my picks at the start of the season to go on and win the league, and we've not really had that dominant feel from this Dean Smith side that we've perhaps been accustomed to seeing with Norwich under Daniel Farke over these previous seasons in the Championship. With that being said, I think the strength of the squad goes ahead and carries them into at least this place in around sort of 5th or 4th. I don't see them being much lower than that because they do have an array of talent throughout the pitch there. And while the system isn't quite as cohesive as we've been used to seeing with Norwich in recent years, I think the quality gets them a top 6 finish at least. Now, the top 3 I think is really interesting. At the moment, my pick for 3rd would probably be Watford, but with a manager like Slaven Bilic and the talent that's there in that squad, if they have a little bit of a flutter in the January window as well, absolutely no reason why Watford perhaps couldn't dislodge one of the teams that I've got in my top 2 at the moment. But Watford have been quite an inconsistent package up until this point, but once again, with that being said, they're 4th in the table at this point and only, you know, a couple wins away from claiming that spot in the top 2. At the moment, I see them just falling short, but with the array of talent they've got in there, there's no writing them off. And then in as my top 2, I've got it unchanged from what it is in real life at the moment. 2nd place, I have gone for Sheffield United. Just feels as if they've learned some of those lessons from last season under Paul Heckingbottom. They're growing as a squad, and Ilman Ndiaye continues to be absolutely brilliant. And just generally speaking, the whole spine of that Sheffield United side is absolutely fantastic. They've got arguably, you know, one of the best players in the league for every position down the spine of that team, which is some going. Ahmed Hosek, I think, has made the world of difference to that back line. He's been absolutely exceptional when he's fit. And now that they've got a striker in Ollie McBurney, who's in, you know, prolific form at the moment, I think they've got those missing ingredients that they were probably lacking from last season. Coming in 1st place though, and as my pick to win the Championship from this point onwards, I am going for Burnley. I think they are the obvious pick at this point in the season. We're 21 games in, they've only lost 2 matches so far. They've scored more goals than anyone else, they've got one of the best defensive records in the league, and I also think they've got probably the most cohesive and nailed down system of play as well. Under company, everyone in that side knows the role in that team. Wouldn't put it past them maybe to spend a little bit more money in January to go ahead and ensure they get themselves over the line. And they've also got Scott Twine to come back into that team as well, which I think is unbelievably exciting given how dynamic they've already been in the final third. Someone like Twine gives them that little bit of edge maybe from set pieces and some other places that Burnley have been lacking. So as you can see to the side of me, those are my picks as of recording right now for how I personally see the Championship ending, but I'm sure we'll see plenty of curveballs from this point onwards. The January transfer window is going to have a massive impact on things as well, but as of right now, this is where or whereabouts I see every club finishing. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do get your predictions in the comments down below. I want you guys to put your money where your mouth is. Where do you see your club finishing come the end of the season? Apart from that though guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Thanks for watching though guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.